As it's the case with most sports leagues, the NBA is headlined by its players, who are some of the best athletes in the world. The players are the ones who win the games, make spectacular plays, and become celebrities. Therefore, they're the ones who attract people's attention every day. However, while they're arguably the most important element of the game, they're not alone when it comes to putting together a quality product. Every person related to a franchise contributes to its success, but among all the people who make winning games a possibility, nobody has a role as relevant as a general manager. GMs are the ones responsible for running a team and building a roster that's capable of being competitive. So having a good one is a requirement to build a winning program. But despite there being many talented GMs across the league, it may be time for us to recognize that none may be as good at his job as the Thunder's Sam Presti. Welcome to Courtside. Today we're taking a look at Presti's trajectory as the leader of a franchise to determine whether he can be considered the league's premier executive. While almost all of basketball's most exciting moments have come on the court, team executives have always played a significant role in making such moments come to life. And even though they may not receive as much attention as the players, a valuable GM is arguably one of the most crucial elements to compete for a championship. After all, the players are only part of the equation. And while they may easily be the most relevant piece of any team, the truth is that even the most talented players in the league won't be able to win a title if they don't have the support of a front office that's willing to put a talented cast around them. However, that's not as easy as it may sound. Building a competitive roster from the ground up is a difficult task. It implies the need to find players that can become the cornerstone of a franchise while looking for ways to improve the roster immediately and in the future at the same time. In other words, it requires a lot of work and dedication. However, every now and then there are a few executives capable of putting together the right pieces to keep the team competitive through the years, and Presti may very well be the most successful GM because of that. His career as an executive started several years ago with the San Antonio Spurs, where he was able to steadily progress through the ranks after initiating as an interim, and even reached a point where he was able to convince the team to select French sensation Tony Parker in the 2001 draft. But it wasn't until 2007 when he would get his first job as a general manager. That year, he was hired by the then Seattle Supersonics to lead what would be the last rebuilding process of the former franchise to date. He had an immediate impact with his new team as he was able to select Kevin Durant in the 2007 draft. Then, after ownership decided to relocate the franchise to Oklahoma City and rebrand it as the Thunder, he kept on making smart decisions that ended up opening and closing a championship window for the team. Some of his most relevant decisions included the hiring of Scott Brooks as the head coach of the team, as well as the selections of Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Serge Ibaka in the first 2 years as the Thunder. Such moves allowed the young franchise to quickly emerge as a playoff contender and reach the finals in 2012. However, following a loss against the Miami Heat and a failed negotiation with Harden, he decided to trade the former Sixth Man of the Year away, and without him, the team wasn't able to return to the championship round. Still behind the leadership of Westbrook and Durant, OKC remained as one of the best teams in the league until 2016, when KD, now an MVP winner, decided to leave in free agency to sign a contract with the Golden State Warriors. At that point, there was a lot of pressure in the front office to convince Westbrook to sign an extension, given that if they lost him as well, they would be forced to go through another rebuild. But Presti managed to do just that and signed Russell to what remains as one of the largest contracts in the league. And then after an MVP-worthy season by the point guard, he was able to acquire star players Paul George and Carmelo Anthony to help the team regain its status as a championship contender. In the end, though, the experiment didn't work out as expected, and the Thunder failed to win a single playoff series despite its collection of talent. So after being eliminated from the 2019 playoffs, the writing was on the wall, and he once again handled the pressure exceptionally well. First, he worked through George's trade demand to the Clippers and was able to turn the MVP candidate into a package that consisted of Danilo Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and a record collection of future draft picks. Then he followed that by turning Westbrook's seemingly untradeable contract into Chris Paul and more future selections in the draft. At that point, it was expected the Thunder would start to rebuild. However, the team still counted with talented players on the roster, and behind Paul's leadership, they shocked the world by reaching the playoffs and coming a couple of shots away from reaching the second round. Their impressive campaign helped CP3 and the team's other vets to improve their trade value while also allowing Shai to emerge as a versatile threat that could become the cornerstone of a new era for the franchise. But once the season was over, there was much speculation about what the front office would prefer to do going forward. However, as soon as it was announced Coach Billy Donovan would not return to the team and that his replacement would be former G League coach Mark Daigneault, it became evident Presti and his team had decided to go through a full rebuild. So once the trade moratorium was lifted, the Thunder became one of the most active teams in the league, completing transactions with almost half of the rest of the organizations in the NBA. Among many others, the team traded Paul, Dennis Schroeder, and Steven Adams away in exchange for future draft picks and players like Danny Green, Ricky Rubio, and Kelly Oubre Jr. that were subsequently turned into more future assets as well. All in all, the Thunder's completed 10 trades involving 14 teams at the time being. The multiple transactions allowed the team to move up in this year's draft to select at number 17. But what's more important is the selections that are about to come. Oklahoma City is currently looking at around 16 first-round picks and 13 second-round picks through 2027, a collection of future assets unlike any we've ever seen before. Presti's plan has been the most aggressive rebuild in recent years since the start of The Process in Philadelphia. The Thunder's GM will call it reposition instead of rebuilding to avoid any kind of controversies. However, his intentions are clear: acquire as many picks as possible. That's not all about his strategy. Aside from Shea and Luguentz-Dort, a few other players remain with the team, and those who do are mostly young prospects that are still developing their games. But they won't be alone in that regard. Along with the many future picks, the team has acquired a vast number of young players either through the draft or via trade. The list includes names such as TJ Leaf, Ty Jerome, Justin Jackson, Kenrich Williams, and many others. None of those names are particularly exciting additions for the team, but it's clear that Presti and the rest of the front office will try to find a hidden gem among them, even if it involves taking some risks. Outside of the young players, the Thunder also acquired veterans like Trevor Ariza, George Hill, Darius Miller, and Al Horford. Some of them could be on the move before the start of the season, but if they remain with the team, they could add a valuable veteran presence that could mentor the rest of the roster. But even if they're part of the roster by the start of the season, there's no guarantee they'll spend a lot of time with the team. After all, it's probable the coaching staff and the front office will use the coming season to evaluate which pieces may work to build a contender in the long term and which ones should be moved away. That's something natural in every rebuilding process. The team will need to look for those players who may have star potential or who at least could become valuable role players. The good news is the Thunder has previous experience finding and developing such players, but the bad news is that it will be hard to predict what kind of talent will be joining the team in the coming years. Since most of the future selections correspond to organizations that are currently either trying to compete for a championship or a playoff spot, it's hard to imagine most of them going to the lottery. In other words, the Thunder could end up having a collection of non-lottery picks, something that may not be ideal when trying to acquire a potential star. However, if they do have a poor record in the next few seasons, their own picks could be among the top 10, and we already know how good the team is at using its own picks to acquire excellent players. And even if they don't get a high pick, Presti will probably try to continue making moves to improve his team's chances of acquiring elite talent to build a contender in the near future. After all, we've already seen him complete a successful rebuild in only 3 seasons. And then when things got complicated, he somehow managed to add multiple stars and then traded their contracts in exchange for future assets. Outside of New Orleans, no team will be close to having as many picks as the Thunder in the coming years. And the way the team has seamlessly made the transition through many different eras in the last decade while remaining competitive has been a masterful job. We should expect to see that again sooner rather than later. Altogether, Presti has shown he's capable of building a championship contender from the ground up, retooling a playoff contender on the fly by adding star power and turning seemingly untradeable contracts into multiple assets. The fact that he's done all that in just a little over a decade makes things even more impressive. And the possibility of the Thunder coming back better than ever in a few years makes one thing clear: there may not be a better general manager in the NBA than Sam Presti. But now, what do you think about OKC's future? Do you believe they'll be able to build a team the same way they did during the late 2000s? Let us know in the comments. We hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, remember to like it and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. We are Courtside.